Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sam.
And today we're going to be taking a look at Planet Unknown. In Planet Unknown, we are going to be different corporations going out and exploring these different planets, kind of, I guess, terraforming them by placing out different polyomino tiles and moving up these corporation tracks. So let me show you how this works, and then we'll come back and give you our final review. Alright, so Planet Unknown is a polyomino game for 1 to 6 players. It is designed by Ryan Lambert and Adam Rayberg, I believe I'm saying that correctly, and published by Adam's Apples Games. The game plays in about 60 minutes, and essentially players are going to be competing to place these tiles on the board in order to complete columns and rows and score points, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game is going to be the winner. So let's see how it's played. Alright, so as you can see, I've already set up a game for Planet Unknown. Now, each player is going to have their own planet and their own corporation. Now, I have picked just the generic to show you how it's played, but there are asymmetrical sides on every single opposite side here. So each of these planets has a asymmetrical side, as well as each of these corporations that are all different. And I'll just show those off a little bit at the end, okay? So what you're going to be doing on this turn is, on your turn, you are going to be drafting tiles from the depot that is marked with your little depot marker here. So if I'm the yellow player, I'm only going to take from the depot that is in front of me. And so that depot is going to consist of 2 different sections on this Lazy Susan. So if I bring this a little closer, you're going to see that the Lazy Susan is broken into 6 different sections. Each section is going to entail 2 tiles. So you're going to have this top smaller one and this bottom one that's slightly larger, or maybe even the same size like over here. And these can change depending on how you set up the game. So on your turn, everybody is going to take their turns simultaneously. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to take one of the tiles from the depot in front of you, and you are going to place it out onto your board. Okay? And for your first tile, you have to place it somewhere on the edge of your board, and then any following tiles that you place has to be connected to an already placed tile. So I could place this here, since it's on the edge of my board, and then any subsequent tiles would then branch off of that tile. Okay, so as you're placing these out, you're going to see that the tiles have different terrain on them, and there are 6 different terrains that you're going to see. You're going to see rover, you're going to see tech, you're going to see biomass, you're going to see water, and you're going to see civilization. And that's going to pertain to your corporation board. So, but I don't want to move too fast, so I'm going to leave that for right now. So everybody's going to be taking these tiles and placing them out onto their board. And as you're placing them out on the board, what you're trying to do is you're going to try to be completing rows and columns on your planet, because at the end of the game, for every row and column that you have completely filled, you are going to score points based on the metals that are along the edge of the board, ranging between 1 and 3 points for each row or column. Okay, and they have to be completely filled. And what I mean by that is that as you are taking these tiles and placing them, you are going to come across tiles that have these little meteor symbols on them. So for example, if I were to place a tile like this, I would have to place a meteor where that is at. Okay, and as you can see, you also have these blue life pods. Every planet is going to start with 6 on their board. So if at the end of the game you have a life pod or a meteorite in a row or column, that is going to block you from scoring that row or column. So you want to make sure that you collect those or get rid of them in some way so that they do not block your scoring. Okay, so at the end of the game, you're really going to be competing to try and get the most points. One of the big ways you're going to score points is going to be from your planet itself. Another way is going to be over here, and you're going to have some neighborly objectives that you're going to be competing with other players in order to complete. So it may be having the most of a certain symbol around the edge of the planet. It may be having the most of a cluster. You might have to have a certain shape of a certain terrain, but what you're going to be doing is you're going to be competing for these, and whoever has the most is going to score 5 victory points, and if there's a tie, you're going to score 2 victory points. Okay, so you're going to have those that you're going to be competing over as well, and each player is also going to have their own private objective where you can earn another 5 points. So for example, this one is that I have to have 5 or less energy resources on my planet. Okay, so once you're going to keep going and keep going until somebody either completes their planet or they cannot place a tile legally. If you cannot place a tile legally, you'll still choose one and you'll be able to move up the tracks on your corporation, but that's going to be the last turn for everyone. And then you're going to go to final scoring. So that's how the game's generally going to work. But let's focus on these corporation boards over here, because this is what's going to make you really different from everybody else when you are playing with the asymmetrical player boards and the planets. That's going to be different as well. But the real part of this game that's going to shine is going to be these corporations over here. So let's kind of go over and focus on these corporation boards. All right, so I have us zoomed in here a little bit to focus on the corporation board and how this is going to work. Now, the universal corporation here is going to be the most basic one. So I'm going to use this just as an example on how this is going to work. So each corporation, depending on which one you pick, is going to have its own little special ability here down at the bottom. So with the basic one, this is just the basic where you advance your trackers to gain benefits, unlock milestones, and score the highest medal your track covers or surpasses. Okay, and that's going to score pretty much anyway for any corporation. As you're going to be placing out these tiles, you're going to be moving up these 5 different tracks. And as you're moving up, you're going to be gaining different benefits, whether that be medals that are going to score at the end of the game based on how high you are. It could be these little like pinwheel symbols that are wilds, and they allow you to move up on any track an extra space. It could be one of these Civ icons here, which are going to allow you to gain so maybe one-time use or end-game additional scoring there. Or it could be these biomass tokens that you're going to be able to place out onto the board that are just these little 1x1s. It may be a rover space, because each corporation is going to have their own set number of rovers. So this one's going to give you 2. And as you move up the rover track, you're going to be able to place out rovers. And they're also going to tell you how many spaces a rover can move based on when you're moving up that track. And finally, for the tech track, you're going to be unlocking these different abilities that are only going to be for your corporation. As you move up, you're going to be unlocking the different level abilities. Okay, so you're trying to advance these to get points, but then also taking advantage of the different benefits that you're going to get as you're moving up these tracks. Now, how you're going to move up these tracks is going to be based on the tiles that you're placing. Okay, so when you place a tile, you are going to move the cube up whenever it matches that same symbol. So as you can see here, let's take this out for real quick. When I place this tile, I have one rover symbol and I have one tech symbol. So I would then advance my rover cube up 1, and I would advance my tech cube up 1. Okay, and as you can see, I covered up my rover icon here. I know it's a little small, but you're going to be able to put out a rover. So when I'm able to put out a rover, I take one of my rovers that I have available and I can put it on any square on the tile that I just placed. So it doesn't necessarily have to be there. I could put it all the way up there. And the reason why you're going to be putting these rovers out is because when you are advancing up this track, you're going to get movement for those rovers. So let's say in a future turn, I did play this, right? And I have a rover there. I would then advance it 1 space, and I can move my rover 1 space. If I was all the way up at 4 or 3 or 2 and I had multiple rovers, I could either spend all the movement on one rover or separate it between multiples, however I wish to use them. Okay, and so as you're moving these rovers, the point of them is that they're going to go around and they're going to be collecting these meteors or life pods, and you're going to score points for them at the end of the game depending on how many you have. So for each life pod, you just have to move your rover onto the space. You don't have to be on a tile. The rover can move off the tiles and cross wherever it is, unless there's a special rule that tells you otherwise. But whenever you move onto a space that has a life pod, you can then collect it, and it's going to score you points at the end of the game. You'll just store it up at the top in its space. If you were to move on to a space that had a meteorite, the same thing is going to happen, but you're going to place it over here, because for this one, you're going to get 1 point for every 3 meteors. Again, there are ways to score more points for meteors, just kind of depends on what happens during your gameplay and what you get access to. Okay, so that's how the rover is going to work. How the tech is going to work is, like I said, as you're moving up, you're going to be able to gain these different abilities. So once my tech gets up to level 1, I now have access to this ability, which says that my tile adjacency placement restriction may be ignored. So any future tiles that I place, I do not have to place adjacent to my previous tile. So I could, for example, go, let's say, way up here. If I want to, I don't have to connect, and you're going to unlock more and more. So I may store a biomass patch to be placed at the end of the game. So typically, whenever you would gain one of these, you have to place them the same turn that you earn them. However, if you were to unlock this level 2 tech, you could then store them to save and use at least one until the end of the game. Okay, so that's how these 2 tracks are going to work. The biomass is going to be similar whenever you place a green tile here. If you have one of these biomass icons, you're going to move up the track. Whenever you again come across one of these little pinwheels, so let's say advance there, it would let me move up any track in additional space. So I could choose the biomass again, or I could choose a different track to move up. However, let's say we chose the biomass track, and now I'm covering up one of these little tree icons. That means I'm going to get one of these biomass tokens, and I can place them anywhere out onto the board. Okay, obviously following tile placement rules. Okay, so that's going to be that one. Now let's talk about a little bit of a tricky track, and that's going to be the water track. So let me remove some of these tiles here to explain how this is going to work. So the water track is only going to advance if you place a token that has water on it onto a space that has planetary ice. Okay, it doesn't have to be all of the water, but at least one square on that tile that is water has to be touching or covering up, not touching, covering up a planetary ice space. Okay, so if I place this here, I would still be able to move up the rover track. However, I would not be able to move up the water track because it's not on top of planetary ice. However, if I were to place it, you know, if I had it set up a little bit differently, like this, and I place my tile like so, this space here is covering up planetary ice. So I would be able to advance up one space on my water track. So that's one difference from generally every single other track or every single other terrain that is going to move a little different. So it's an exception to the rule. All right. And last but not least, for the tracks, you have the sieve track. Now for the sieve track, you're going to be looking at these icons here. So every time you place a tile that has that icon, you will then move up the sieve track. Now, one thing I should mention is that when you are placing these tiles, if you were to ever place them on top of a life pod, or even if there was a rover, they would get destroyed and removed from the board, and you could not use the rover again. You'd be then down to just the one rover that you have remaining. All right, so keep that in mind when you're placing your tiles. So just like any other tile, this sieve icon is going to move up your sieve track. And as you move up, you're eventually going to come to these little icons. And let me pull these off just because I realize it is pretty small to see in the video. But as you're going to be moving up, you're going to be landing on these different icons, and depending on how high you go, you're going to get different level cards. And these icons are going to refer to these Civ cards that you're going to be getting. So you have level 1s all the way up to level 4s. And when you get them, you get to look through the ones that are available, and you can choose whichever one you want. Now, if they're immediate, they're going to say immediate down here. If not, it's going to be end game scoring. But they're going to give you different benefits, whether that be moving a rover, advancing up tracks, or being able to get additional biomass, or even improving the way that you're going to be scoring different things. You might have things that have to pertain to life pods. It could be straight up victory points. There are also ones that improve your scoring when it comes to life pods, or even meteors that you have collected. Okay, so that's going to cover these 5 tracks. But you might say, Andrew, you said there's 6 different terrain, there's only 5 tracks. How is that going to work? Well, the last track that you're going to be dealing with is going to, or not track, I should say, terrain, is going to be the energy terrain. So you're going to see these little solar panels on like a deserty terrain. And what this is going to be is this is going to allow you to move up any different track. And the way that's going to work is that when you place a tile that has the energy terrain on it, okay, instead of moving up a energy track, you're going to be able to move up any track that is adjacent to that energy terrain. So if I place this here, I can advance up the Civ tech line because it's adjacent here, or I can move up the water because this is all one giant energy terrain area. I can kind of follow this path, and since it is adjacent to water, I can then move up my water track. If I had a snake all the way around and it made it to a rover space, I could then move up rover or even tech, and that's how the energy is going to help you advance up different tracks on your corporation board. Okay, and so that's pretty much how you're going to be playing. You're going to be placing these out. After every turn, the Lazy Susan is going to change. So if I focus up a little bit on the Lazy Susan, so in a 2-player game, let's say I had it like this, in a 2-player game, the Lazy Susan's not going to change drastically. So you're going to be able to, after you take your turn, so the active player is whoever's going to have this token, and this is only going to be really important in maybe a higher player count, or if there's ever a tie for when people are moving up that Civ track. If there's ever a tie when somebody reaches these Civ cards at the same time, the active player gets to choose their card first. Okay, so that's the only thing that this is going to kind of determine, really. So in a 2-player game, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to pass this to the next player, and the depot is going to rotate 1 space, and then you're going to be able to choose from that depot. However, in a 3 to 6 player game, whoever the active player is going to have a choice of any tile that they want. So I could just spin this all the way across and take this tile if I want. I don't have to worry about it just slowly moving, and all the other players are just going to get stuck with what they're assigned. So there's a little bit more choice when you're playing with that higher player count, but then you also can't necessarily plan as far ahead as you would be able to in a 2-player game per se. Okay, so that's the main difference when it comes to a 2-player game and when it comes to those higher player counts. All right, so then at the end of the game, you're going to score points for those completed columns and rows, the neighbor objectives, any private objectives. You're also going to score points for your Civ cards, and again, you're going to be scoring points for your corporation tracks. So as you're moving up, however high you get, whatever the highest medal that you're either covering or have surpassed, that's how many points you're going to score for that track. Again, we already talked about life pods and meteorites, and so whoever has the most points at the end of the game is going to be the winner. And that's pretty much how you're going to play Planet Unknown. So let me grab some of the boards. I think I might have showed them off a little bit, but you know, let me just show off some of the different, I guess I could show these here. So like you see jump drive. So this one, instead of putting life pods up here, you're going to have an option to place them over here to unlock tech. So as you can see, there is no level 1 all the way up to level 6. Instead, you're going to have for one, this one actually has 6 tech available to them to unlock, but you can choose whichever one you want. All right, so that's going to be the main one for this board. Let me grab some others and I'll show off the corporations in more detail. So taking a look at some more corporations, here you have the Oasis Unlimited Corporation. And as you can see, the water track is a lot different on this board. What you're going to be doing is when you're advancing the water, you're going to be all over the place. And it could potentially block you from being able to progress up other tracks. However, if you get it all the way to the top, you can see that you're going to score 15 points, which I believe is the highest amount for any water track. So that's going to be pretty unique. Again, you're going to have your own little thing down here, as well as your own texts that are going to pertain only to you. Let's see. The next one we have here is the Republic. So as you can see, for the Republic, you only get 1 rover. And so the unique thing about this one is that you must regress another track each time you claim a milestone from the Civ track. So each time you go up the Civ track, which as you can see, you have access to more cards than any other corporation. You can actually get 2 level 4s, 2 level 3s, and 2 level 2s. But each time you claim a milestone from that track, you then have to regress from another track. Okay, and you do not claim benefits when you regress, so you can't gain this biomass again when you drop down. Again, you're going to have your own unique text there. For this flux industry, you're going to have a little flux token, and you're going to choose your flux track. And as you you designate that, you're going to be able to, whenever you unlock a tech, you get to reposition it around and maybe able to help go up a certain track more often, or have multiple markers going up the same track. So only your most recent unlocked tech is available though. So, but the techs here are very strong for that corporation. All right, so for the Wormhole Corporation here, you are going to be able to, as you can see, the biomass track is very different here. You have giant 2-slot spaces that move a lot faster going up the track. However, when you move up this biomass track, you're going to be able to just choose one of the 2 benefits. Okay, so you're going to only be able to take one of those benefits. However, what's going to be nice is that you can, as you move up on your tech, you can reset this and continue to go around and collect more benefits for that if you progress all the way to the top. Okay, so it says advance your biomass tracker from the tile placement only when you expand a biomass terrain area. So it's not just when you place a biomass terrain, it has to expand an existing biomass terrain. All right, and then you just choose one benefit. So that's how that's going to work. Here we're going to have the Cosmos Corporation, where you're going to, again, only get 1 rover, and you're going to choose to position collected life pods onto your resource track of your scoring area. So your trackers get to skip over these life pods where you place them to kind of help them advance a little bit quicker, and then benefits and metals that are covered by life pods are going to be ignored. So if you cover up a benefit, you're not going to achieve it when you jump over. Okay, so that's how that one's going to work. Then you have the Horizon Group. Now this one, you're going to get 4 rovers. And the interesting about this, because you're going to have a lot more movement all the way up to 5 here. And so what's going to happen is that in order for you to collect a meteorite with your rover, you now have to pick it up and deliver it back to a rover resource on the planet. So it adds a little bit of a pickup and delivery. And again, you're going to have those unique techs that are going to pertain only to your corporation. And then finally, you're going to have the makeshift here. So this one, you may advance any track diagonally. All right, so you're going to be able to kind of jump across. And any tracker may claim any benefit. And tech levels are locked if no tracker is currently unlocking the tech. So if you don't have a tracker here, then you're not going to be able to use these tech. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, but meanwhile being able to take advantage of the moving diagonally with those track markers. So that's how those corporations are going to work. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's not as much asymmetry when it comes to the planets. But as you see, each one is going to have their own layout. They're also going to have their own unique rule set for that board. And so that's really where this game is going to shine, is with that asymmetry, when you're going to be matching up different planets and different corporations, doing a bunch of really cool stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much how Planet Unknown is going to play. So let's go ahead and take it back up top and give you our final thoughts. All right, so that's how you play Planet Unknown. So let's jump right in. This is a polyomino game, and we really like tile placement games, so this really is going to fall in line with a lot of those other tile placement games. But this is the first one that I've played where it is space themed.
Yeah.
You know, usually it is a lot of nature and animals and that kind of stuff, whereas this one is different, and I really like that it's different. You know, we don't own a ton of space games really, other than I think like Tiny Epic Galaxies and Space Base, which is weird because I've always been interested in space games, although none of them just really have seemed...
Terraforming Mars too.
Terraforming Mars, but I'm not as big on it as many people. It's probably getting close to being on the chopping block, in all honesty, for our collection.
Yeah, that's an old one for you.
Yeah, and I've just lost so much interest in Terraforming Mars. It's just so much to get to the table. But anyway, we're not talking about that game. But so with Planet Unknown, you know, obviously I'm comparing this to one of our favorite games of all time, someone's most favorite game of all time, and that's Isle of Cats, you know. And you can compare this to a lot of other polyomino games, but to me it just feels more, the tile placement is Isle of Catty, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So so let's
Catty.
talk a little bit about our positives first. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Obviously, I love the tile placement. I think that is a really cool part of the game. I love also that it's like you're building up your own individual planet. Right. So each of us have a different planet. I mean, if you choose to, obviously. So you're building up your own planet. You each have your own like abilities per se, like when you're going up the tracks. So I think that's awesome. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And you're also like, it feels like you're discovering a different planet, like how you're moving your rovers.
Right.
I thought that was fun. Like, I thought that was a fun part of the game, and you know, putting out your meteorites and you know, picking up your little pods and, you know, trying to collect the meteorites, or they kind of, you know, they'll hurt you in the end. But yeah, I just thought that it felt very thematic, but it was like, it was fun, and I liked that it was pretty simple to learn, but also felt very like epic type game. You know, it didn't feel like, oh, like it's too simple and it feels boring and stuff, but I felt like there was a lot of different stuff that you could do.
Yeah, the asymmetry is great in this game because there are so many different corporations that you can play as. I think there's 9 different corporations. And they each play very differently, whether it be the different technologies that you unlock as you move up that tech track, or even just the corporation's abilities in general that you're going to get. And it could even come down to how many rovers you have. You could have 4 rovers with one, 2 with another, 1 with another. And that's only half of the asymmetry, because then you have the planets. I'll never probably play just the generic. It's great. It's great to, when you first play, do the generic kind of thing. But after you get the hang of it, which is not going to take very long. I mean, turns are so snappy and quick. You're really going to want to be focusing on playing those different planets and be like, oh, I want the one that has the cities, or oh, I want the one that's like the black hole, or oh, I want the one that, you know, has holes in it and stuff, or the one that has 3 planets. And, you know, I just can't see ever wanting to go back to a generic kind of planet. And I think that's really interesting. I agree. I think it's a fairly easy teach. And I'll talk a little bit about maybe some of the difficulties when it comes to teaching, but the game is super quick to set up. I mean, all the tiles are already in that Lazy Susan. And so the Lazy Susan is very thematic. You know, it's like the Space Center kind of thing, and I like that. In a 2-player game, you just rotate the Lazy Susan once, but in a 3 and 4 or 5 all the way up to, and it plays up to 6 players, whoever the active player is, they get to choose whichever one they want. Everybody kind of gets stuck with what's assigned to them in their little depot. And so I like that. You kind of have some options, or you have 1 or 2 tiles that you can take, so you have options, but it's not like you have too many options to where you can get AP. And everybody's doing it at the same time, and depending on what you pick, you move up different tracks. And so I think the real interesting thing that comes here for this game is the corporations. As I'm thinking about what really stands out to me in this game is definitely the corporations. The tile placement is fun, and I love that little rover moving around and collecting life pods, because those are worth points. Or maybe I have the corporation that I use the life pods for the technologies. Or you have the meteorites, because those give me points, but if I don't pick them up, then they're going to block me from finishing rows and columns that are going to score me points. So I really like that little added thing on the board where you're driving these little rovers around trying to collect these different things. And I like that. I thought that was really awesome. And so yeah.
I was like, ooh, I can go anywhere. Like, I don't have to have a tile down. Like, I could just go anywhere, And I thought that was cool, that you're kind of like going off-roading, on a space that doesn't have anything to get to where you need to go. Like, I thought that was cool.
Right. And then the fact that like a tile could destroy them or whatever kind of thing that happens. But I really like that the game was super easy to set up. You got the Lazy Susan, which I already mentioned, but then you have the extra trays that you literally just pull out, pop open, you're ready to go. The card setup is super quick and easy. Even just being able to set up your own player board is super quick and easy as well. So
it's an easy cleanup.
It's an easy setup. It's an easy teach, relatively easy teach. So yeah, I'll kind of segue into my negatives for the game and kind of talking about, I don't want to say it's necessarily a negative for the game per se. However, as I was teaching these to other players and kind of getting their feedback on what they thought, was that the main thing was all the tracks seem pretty easy, right? You play a biomass or bio token or whatever, you move up. You play a rover, you move up. The only thing that might have been a little bit confusing, that because it worked a little differently, was maybe the water, because you had to play the water on top of planetary ice in order to move up. And so it doesn't have to be the whole water tile, but at least one part of it has to cover planetary ice. So they might be like, oh, it has a symbol, I get to move up the track. But reality is it also depends on where you place it. I think another slightly difficult, but actually people were more confused about the water track than they were about the energy that you're putting out there, because then you get to move up tracks based on what it's touching, and kind of following that line of energy terrain, so to say. But they didn't find that to be too difficult. But I think when it came down to teaching it, and I'd be like, oh, which one do you think was easier to learn, Isle of Cats or Planet Unknown? They actually all had said that they thought Planet Unknown was a little bit more difficult to learn because of the corporation. But I don't think it was drastically more difficult. And honestly, the teach doesn't really take that long. The only other real negative, because I really like this game. I really do. The thing that is probably the most frustrating part with the game is, unfortunately, the production. And I love the production, right? I love the Lazy Susan. I love the like triple layered boards, because like literally it's dual layered on both sides, which is nice because those cubes fit in there. But I think the planets are a little thin. I wish they would have been just a little bit thicker. I can already kind of see some wear and tear on those planet boards. The box is a little small, because the Lazy Susan is, in a weird way, wider. It's kind of bowing out the sides of my box. Even kind of rubbing the Lazy Susan when you put it in there, it scrapes up against the side and kind of scraping some of the cardboard off. So I really hope that the box integrity lasts, because this is a game that I want to be able to pull out and play lots and lots of times, and sometimes multiple times a night. But I don't want it to kind of eventually fall apart.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do worry a little bit about that. I know there's an issue with the wash, but they posted things to be able to fix that, and I'm gonna fix my wash and everything, but ultimately it doesn't take away from the gameplay.
It still looks cool.
Right. I really like the plastic meteorites and the plastic rovers and life pods, and so I'm not gonna knock it too much for that. The one thing I do wish is that they had a cover for the Lazy Susan, because as you can see, I store all my games vertically, and there is no cover for this. So because the box doesn't sit perfectly and there's like some lift, if I store it, some of those tiles are gonna fall out, and it can be real frustrating to open up the box and see tiles everywhere. And so, if I store them horizontally, not a big deal, but the fact that I store them vertically is a little bit more of a frustration there. But ultimately, I really, really like this game. I don't have a ton of negatives outside of just maybe some minor production issues. So do you have any negatives for the game?
Honestly, I really don't have too many negatives. I really enjoyed the game. The production, I'm like, I mean, it doesn't bother me as much because, I wasn't the one that bought it, and then I look at those things. But I will agree with you that the planet should have been a thicker cardboard.
Yeah.
Just because I'm like, it seems kind of off to have like a super thick dual layer track and then a very thin piece of paper, essentially. So I feel like they should have made it thicker.
And then they need an even bigger box, and it is a pretty big size box.
I mean, I was like, I get it. I mean, they were probably trying to like save some space and stuff like that. But and I think for me, just kind of with like the gameplay, which I guess it's kind of like you're using the Lazy Susan and you're not really sure what you're gonna end up with, But my only complaint was that there was a game or two where I felt like I was not getting any rover movement. Hardly at all. And then I was like, oh man, like I can't pick up these meteorites. And then it's like I had them like all over the board, and then it's like 0 points, 0 points, 0 points. You can't like score unless you're picking those up. And then
unless it's all filled in and those can't be on the board.
Yeah, and then I think I had like one, it was like for me to score extra points though. So I wanted to do it. And that was with the tech cards, right?
Yeah, so they have the Civ cards,
The Civ cards, that's what they were. There were Civ cards, and it was like, okay, you have to have more life pods collected than meteorites. And so I was trying to balance that.
You're talking about the objectives, too. Like, we had the neighborly objectives and the private objectives.
Right. Yes. So, I mean, obviously, that's my choice. I went with that specific objective. But I'm, like, collecting, I got to keep more life pods than meteorites. But then you're like, oh, that was kind of... because then you have all these meteorites out there, because I mean the tiles are random, so you may have 2 tiles to choose from and they both have meteorites on them.
Right.
So you can't really avoid it.
And I think that's more prevalent in a 2-player game when you just kind of have to try to look at what's coming your way. And if you just don't get the terrain that you're looking for, then you're kind of SOL.
Yeah.
However, if you're playing in a higher player count, you can be like, when it's your turn, you're like, oh, I want rover. I'm taking that one way over there, and there's nothing you can do to stop me.
Yeah.
And so I do like that. One thing, I know you were talking about the objective cards, but I had mentioned the Civ cards. I would like to, I just wish there was... This is weird to say. I kind of wish there was even more card play in the game with those Civ cards, but I really like those. There's not very many. Right? Yeah. There's not. I mean, you only use so many for so many player games and whatnot. But man, I wish I could get more of those cards and do more stuff. But one negative I did want to mention actually, and we experienced this once, was the game. So the game ends when somebody cannot place a tile, right? Or somebody completely fills their planet.
Yeah.
And this can be problematic if somebody gets themselves in a bind and does not plan ahead of time. And we've had a game where somebody literally could only get to not even half of their planet, but because of poor planning, I won't
Why
say
are you saying somebody? Like, it's obvious that it's me.
We did not get very far because you picked the the black hole, the black hole planet, and it got to where you could not place them legally, and it was just kind of like, we only got like halfway through.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I was doing so well. And your score ended up being like 6.
It was terrible.
You had a really bad score.
I was trying to challenge myself, guys. Like, I was like, ooh, this one looks hard. I'm going to do it. And then I was like, I shouldn't have did that.
So, I mean, you could run into some situation where the game just abruptly ends and it's not expected. Right. I don't really know how they could fix that, but I was just like, oh, are you serious? Because I was like, I was so well, like your plan could just be like, oh, sorry guys, I can't play it. Game's over. What? You know, and it's just kind of crazy because, like you said, you're kind of focused on your own planet.
Well, maybe that's how this is. Planet Unknown. Like, you don't know when the planet's going to stop.
It's called Planet Unknown, not End Game Unknown.
Well, the planet just stopped growing. Right. Like, so, and
I think it was
unknown.
Just a poor corporation.
They lost funding.
But no, yeah. So, again, these are kind of minor little negatives, but things to be aware of that could possibly happen in the game.
Yeah.
So we talked about our positives, our negatives. Let's jump into our scoring. So, first off, I'm just going to ask the question anyway. Planet Unknown, Isle of Cats. Did you feel like there was a lot of overlap, or that they were pretty distinct from one another?
There was some overlap, but I felt like they were different. Right. Very different gameplay for sure. But the tile placement,
right, it's a polyomino game. You're building things out, placing them adjacent to previously placed.
But also
the big thing was probably the corporations, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more asymmetry in Planet Unknown than Isle of Cats.
Yeah.
Yes, Isle of Cats has the cards. Sorry, I keep cutting you off. Go ahead. I asked you the question.
No, I for a second when you were asking it, I thought you were going to be like, so, Isle of Cats or Planet Unknown? Which one do I like more? And I was like, please.
I already know.
Yeah. But, I mean, I like both of the games. I liked Planet Unknown more than I thought I would.
Oh, I was like, more than what?
I honestly, like, when you got it, I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool, whatever. And then it was like, I was fine with playing it like 3-4 times in a row.
Right.
Or like 3-4 days in a row, I guess I should say. Because we played it a lot when we got it. So I like it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I like the asymmetry in this one a lot. And I think that has been coming back. So, I think I want more card play. I like the cards in Isle of Cats. I like the corporations here, and that's they're very distinct, different games. So I don't think you can say, oh, if you have one, you don't have the other, because I feel like that's just the way it is. Polyomino games. Although I'll say with Isle of Cats and Planet Unknown, I don't really need any more polyomino games. I think I'm set. I think I have 2 top tier polyomino
Don't ever
games.
say that.
Okay.
Don't ever. That's my favorite.
Right. Okay, so let's jump into scoring. What would you give Planet Unknown?
I'm going to give it a solid 8.
Solid 8. Okay. So okay. So 8. For me, I am rating it the same that I rated Isle of Cats, and that's an 8.5. So I like both of them almost equally. So, well, pretty much equally. I think each has their pros, And so, I don't know. When we go to ranking our top 100 games again, I'm going to be interested. I think this is going to be a tough one to decide, and how this is going to affect the ratings, because I think this one's easier to get to the table.
Yeah.
It's quicker to set up, quicker to tear down, about the same amount of teach probably. To me, I thought the teach was easier, but that's me. So anyway, 8.5 for me, same that I rate Isle of Cats. I really like this game. I really do. It is such a fun, and no matter what player count, so fast. I could play 2 or I could play 6. Right?
Yeah, I was amazed with
so
how
much
fast
quicker.
It plays.
And I think it's quicker than Isle of Cats. If I were to try to play a 5 or 6 player game of Isle of Cats, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is rough. I could play 5 or 6. Done that, and it's
taken a while.
Yes. So I could play this much faster.
Yeah.
So that's our scores: 8 for Sam and 8.5 for me. Highly recommend this game.
Yes.
I would definitely say check it out. This is Adam's Apples first game. And I think they really knocked it out of the park with this. Granted, they had a few production issues, whatnot, but this is their first game. This is a really good game. I could see this winning a lot of awards, getting a lot of recognition, and I think it deserves it, honestly.
Yeah,
I really do.
It does.
So with that being said, please like, comment, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you get a notification every single time we post a video. And let us know, is this a game that you even really heard about? I feel like I backed it so long ago and was anticipating it to be coming, so I don't know, how much knowledge is out there about this game. So is this a game that you're excited to try? And if you like Isle of Cats or Polyomino games in general, I guess I shouldn't just say Isle of Cats. I would definitely say check this one out. Give it a try. So until next time, we will see you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Bye.